Alright lads, so with the new release of an SSR Bankai Toshiro, the character right now that has taken over the game, the spotlight for the next 2 weeks until we do get a potential new Gin. But Toshiro was not the only character released recently in Soul Resonance, because right now we also have access to a new SR character, that being Momo. And I would like to say Momo's a pretty popular character, especially with the amount of seasonals she got in Brave Souls. So getting an easy to obtain character, a character that is significantly more available when compared to Toshiro, is actually really cool, especially with the fact that she is currently free in the Toshiro event. You can get the character, you can get her weapon stamp, and also core stamp. So with that in mind, since the character is free, you might be wondering, should you be building her, how to build her, and exactly how should you be using her in the potential best spirit type team, because this character is all about boosting your spirit type characters. So with that in mind, it goes without saying that this character is going to be a spirit type support role unit. And the way Momo works is all based around her core passive effects. Well, essentially, when this character does use a technique, it will plant a Kido Snare. And when you follow up with a special attack, a counterattack, or an ultimate, it will ignite the Kido Snare while also granting a stack of insights. Now, Insight as a buff provides a 5% attack boost for your entire team for 30 seconds, which does actually last a long time. But after you acquire a certain number of stacks, you also then do gain extra spirit damage. And this is thanks to a first passive boost, as when you do gain 3 or more stacks of Insight, you will then give 15% spirit damage boost for your entire team, which can be further increased as you do level up the character. So at a bare minimum, when the character does provide 3 stacks of Insight, you will be getting a 15% attack boost and also a 15% spirit damage boost, which is really good at a base. However, if you do summon this character one more time after getting it for free, with the first boundary dupe, you do actually get the opportunity to go up to 6 stacks of Insight, therefore providing your team with a 30% attack boost. So if you are wondering what the best duplicate is for this character, it's definitely going to be her first one. That is by far the most important one, and the other dupes that you do get really don't contribute much besides giving her more damage output, which for this character isn't really that important. Now, fortunately for Momo, from a gameplay standpoint, she does start any quest with 2 charges of her special attack. So once you instantly use her technique, you're then able to instantly follow that up with 2 charges of her special attack to provide stacks of insight for your team. Additionally, when you do switch out this character, she will also be gaining charge for her spiritual pressure, so when she's next available to be used, you can then instantly use her technique once more, followed up by more charges of her special attack. So with that in mind, she has a very easy gameplay loop. Use your technique, follow that up with 2 special attacks, and also an ultimate. And with that in mind, you're going to get a very easy 30% attack boost, assuming you have a duplicate for this character, and also 15% more spirit damage. However, that's not all, because through this character's counter effect, you can also provide the team with at least a 10% spirit damage boost whenever you do counter with this character. So when you are using Momo in the team, when you do get a counter opportunity, definitely use Momo just to provide your team with more damage. This damage boost isn't always going to be active, but it is nice to have additional ways to further boost your team's damage output. And of course, it's also worth mentioning, while the ultimate effect doesn't increase the team's damage output per se, it does automatically grant you 2 stacks of insight, assuming you have applied the Kido Snare. So by the time you get to use Momo's ultimate, if you have yet to reach the max stack of insight, which again is 6 or 3, depending on how many duplicates you have of the character, you definitely will be doing that once you use the ultimates. But if you are wondering how to build the character, it's also fairly simple, especially because if you are playing right now when this character is available, you can get her weapon stamp and also core stamp for free. In terms of the recommended skill build, the game does recommend you to level up the passives and also basic attack. Me personally, I would recommend leveling up the passives as much as possible, since that is the main way she is going to provide damage boost for your entire team, but I would also recommend, most importantly and only, really leveling up the counter effects. Leveling up the counter does increase the amount of spirit damage that she can provide, and that's by far the most important part of the character skill set. The basic attack, ultimate, and technique are good, but that's only really for damage. The character's not here to provide damage. Of course, more damage is nice, and if you want her to contribute to dealing more damage in your team, you definitely can do that, but as we are currently at the start of the game with not many resources, as of right now, I would really only recommend leveling up her counter effect just to get, again, more spirit damage. For the weapon stamp, definitely go with Momo's exclusive weapon stamp, because through this, you do gain double the number of insight when igniting the Kido Snare, and also each stack of insight will then provide 1% extra spirit damage. So through this, you are going to receive your max number of insight stacks, which again is 3 or 6 depending on the boundary level, while also providing more damage per stack of insight, which for the most part is 6% more damage. but that can also be further increased if you pull this weapon stamp multiple times. And if for some reason right now you don't have access to her weapon stamp, you can use the method weapon stamp, which will provide a 6% attack boost for your team after you do release a technique. For core stamps, you definitely want to go with Momo's exclusive core stamp. This does provide more damage on her ultimate. However, when you do release an ultimate, the entire team will gain a crit rate based on the number of insight that she does have. Assuming you have 6 stacks of insight when activating the ultimates, you would then provide a 15% crit rate for your entire team, which again can be further increased to a higher number based on how many duplicates you have for this core stamp. Don't have access to a core stamp, at least for the time being, you can just use the It's My Turn Now, which does provide a 6% attack boost after releasing an ultimate. For her stamp set, you definitely want to go with the Hidden Wisdom stamp set, and this is more so for the 3-piece effect, where after releasing a technique, the entire team gains a 10% damage boost for all damage dealt. Every support wants to use this, and Momo is no different. In terms of each individual piece, however, the only important stat you want to be looking out for is ultimate charge rate, albeit it's not really that important. But the faster you can use the ultimate, the better you can charge up your stacks of insight. Momo is a character that you really don't need to build, but if you had to put something on this character, definitely focus on the third piece, providing ultimate charge rate. And then lastly, for the bond effect, definitely go with the Momo, Renji, and Izuru bond effects, as this will provide a potential 6% attack boost for your entire team. Now, in terms of the teams that you do want to use this character in, she is strictly wanting to be used in a Spirit type team. Technically, you could use her in non-Spirit type teams, as Insight does provide a 30% attack boost for your team. But given that every team has access to good damage-dealing characters, especially Kisuke existing, you're strictly going to be using Momo in a Spirit type team. So right now, that does mean you are going to pair this character with Rukia, and of course also Toshiro. In the future, based on data mines / leaks, if Aizen does end up being the Spirit type tactic unit, her best team will then consist of Aizen and also Toshiro, which I'm sure will make Momo happy, but let's be honest, we all know how that turned out in the series. So it kind of feels like a cruel joke using Momo alongside Aizen and also Toshiro. However, the game itself definitely doesn't forget the lore of Bleach, because her second boundary ascension literally wants her to die to gain stacks of insight. But I'm not sure how useful this effect would actually be, but it is cool nonetheless. When it comes to Momo's rotation, you definitely want to start the quest with her, instantly use your technique, follow that up with 2 special attacks, then you can switch into Momo and Rukia to deal damage. Toshiro is going to be your main DPS, so he is the one that's going to be on the field most of the time, and you're only really going to switch into Momo every now and then to keep these stacks of insight available. Like already stated, Momo's stacks of insight do last 30 seconds, so you don't need to switch into her all that much, only really doing so when your stacks of insight are about to expire. 30 seconds though is a long time, so that does mean that when you are using Toshiro, especially once you do activate the Bankai, you can do a full rotation of his attacks, which consists of basic attacks into a technique, into a counterattack around 3 times, then unleashing the ultimates, all before Momo's insight buff does expire. So in total, what this does mean is that Momo is going to be a really good support for Spirit type teams, especially in content in the future where you might be required to only bring Spirit type characters. Right now, the best part about Momo as a character is that she's free, her core and weapon stamp are also free, and she's also a really inexpensive unit to work on. Realistically, you don't need to level up this character to a high level. You don't need to level up this character's skills besides maybe her counter effects just to provide more damage for your team. When it comes to her boundary ascension, the only one that's important really is the first one. So if you did actively pull for Toshiro, chances are you did get that first duplicate. And then when it comes to the stamps, you don't even need to really level up her stamps. Just having a level 1 set of Hidden Wisdom does the job, as it does provide a 10% attack boost. And that's great because it means you can cycle between potentially using SSR Kisuke and also Momo in the team, depending on the content you are up against. Kisuke, of course, is going to be the go-to support and a character we are going to review on the channel in the coming days. But let's say, for example, if you are doing content like Adventure Mode, where you need to use 2 teams, or maybe Frenzy Feast, Momo could then be a good support for Spirit-type teams, and then Kisuke can be used in any other team that you are using for your second option. However, maybe it's also worth mentioning too, against Momo's usability right now, is that maybe it would be better to use Kisuke in your Spirit-type team, and then use Yachiru, an SR support unit for Slash-type teams. Yachiru's a really good supporter, very similar to Momo, but if you are in a situation where you have Yachiru max ascended through her boundary system, she provides really good buffs for the Slash team, and the Slash team itself is good even with Yachiru, and that can then mean you can use Kisuke in the Spirit type team, providing more buffs, since after all, Kisuke is going to be the better support unit. Which in a way is a shame for Momo's usability, But regardless, if you are a Momo fan and you just want to use her in your team, especially with the fact that she can be used alongside Toshiro, it just makes sense using these two characters together. You definitely can do that. She's an overall good support, works well with especially Toshiro, might get better and works well with Aizen in the future. And like I already mentioned, the best part is that she's a fairly inexpensive unit. You get her for free, you get her core stamp, you get her weapon stamp, and you really don't need to level up any skills besides her counterattack. And even then, it's not that important. Overall, I think Momo's actually really impressive for an SR support character, especially one that was completely free. But like with any support in the game, they're always going to be compared to Kisuke, and by default, most support characters are going to look worse in comparison. So ultimately, it comes down to if you want to use Momo in your team. If you do, those are the benefits she is going to provide, and they're pretty good buffs. Will you use in the team? That ultimately comes down to you. So let me know in the comments below how you feel about Momo. Are you using her? I overall think she's a pretty good SR, especially for a free-to-play SR. She's just not as good as Kisuke, which to be fair, isn't that bad of a situation to be in.